Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cup Interviews, brought to you by Cup of Hemlock Theatre. I am your co-artistic producer, Mackenzie. I normally don't do these episodes. Normally this is more of a Ryan and Jill thing, but today I had someone who I've known for a very long time reach out, and she goes, Mac, I got this new play. I got to talk about it, and I know you have a platform. And I said, absolutely, Trudee, let's get on this. And my team was like, yes, bring it on. So away we go. So please welcome to our Cup family, the wonderful Trudee Romanek. Hello, Trudee.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I had no idea that it was like special dispensation for you to do this. So I appreciate it even more.
Yeah. Normally it's just been Ryan and Jill who normally line up on the interviews, and I'm more on the other end of things. So I do appearances, but not as many as they do. So this is one of those fun treats where I get to do a different forum for a change, which is a nice shake up, as it were. Yeah. But yeah, so Trudee, let's start off with our classic icebreaker question. What is in your cup today?
Well, what is in my cup, I'm afraid, isn't very exciting. It's water. But that's because I need to drink more water. It's good for my brain. So I'm drinking water out of my Theatre by the Bay cup.
I love that. Very fitting mug.
Well, it's very fitting because I wouldn't be a produced playwright if not for Theatre by the Bay. I was writing other things before, and it was all the amazing opportunities that Theatre by the Bay presented, and learning workshops, and they do a monthly theatre lab. And without all of those things, I don't think I would have written the plays that I've written. So I am forever grateful.
Well, we love Theatre by the Bay. That and Talk is Free Theatre. Those two are such big pillars, and both come from Barrie, which is a beautiful thing. Barrie's got this great little corner of the arts community up there.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I feel lucky to live here.
Right? Absolutely. I mean, you got the waterfront, you got two great theater companies, you got there's also a film festival that shows up there once a year. Like, what more could you want? And
15 minutes away is pick your own berries. So,
That's true. Berry Hill Farms. Even better.
That's right.
Even better. And in my cup today, I have some tangerine grapefruit Crystal Light that I am drinking. So water as well, but with a little bit of flavor. And I'm drinking it from my wonderful Stratford mug here that says, "For God's sakes, let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings from Richard II." So a nice fun mug there that I got last season when I was seeing Richard II.
I actually had to think long and hard because I also have a really big wine glass that says "Well Read" R-E-D on it that a member of my family gave me, and I love that a lot too. So
I love that. That's a good one. I love that. I love that. So, Trudee, you mentioned that you've written several plays now, but how did you first become involved in theater? Because I grew up with your wonderful daughter, Brina. Now, so then, did you introduce her to the theater, or did she introduce you into the theater?
No, I introduced her into the theater. Okay. Speaking of Theatre by the Bay, when she was 8, I think, we took she and her older brother to see one of the Shakespeare's in the Tent, and it happened to be Romeo and Juliet. So we thought, okay, well, she was at that girly stage, and her brother was big into sword fighting. So we thought, something for everybody. They both loved it. And that was, one of their early introductions to theater. But I did theater. I was in a play in grade 3, and I was in the drama club this year's drama festival all through high school. And I actually, my degree at U of T is a double specialist in English and drama.
Okay.
So I did theater as a hobby sort of thing, or as a sideline, I guess. And I wrote other things. I was an editor, a book editor, and a picture book editor, and those kinds of things. And then I had one particular story, and I decided it needed to be a play. This was after a community theater had asked me to write a musical in 2005. And I don't know if you were around here then. It was The Tales of Endergrim. And,
that sounds familiar, but I was young because I did Oliver in 2004. So I was like just fresh into the theater scene.
Yes. So it wasn't any great classic or anything like that, but it
I'm
was
sure
based
Sondheim
on
would disagree.
it was based on the 10 character education traits in school. So lots and lots of schools came to see it. And I
Great.
ended up writing all the music for it as well, even though I wasn't
Wow.
supposed to. But the writer backed out, the music writer the composer backed out.
Wow,
So
there you go.
I'm still pretty proud of myself for having done it. And so I had done that. But then I had just been working on other kinds of other forms of writing, nonfiction and young adult fiction. And but I had this adult story that needed another form, needed to be presented in another form. And that's when I started playwriting. And it was a long slog of learning what it should be. And I was about halfway through that slog when Alex Doe said, hey, you know that story, that play that you told me about? We're going to start a monthly theater lab, and it would be great if you could bring a scene to the first one. So that's the 7 years of theater lab is really the journey of me becoming a playwright.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Yeah. So now you have this play you've got on the go right now, but then what are some of your other plays that you've done as well? Just want to hear your full canon. Give us.
Well, you know, it's a small canon, but I wrote a play called Eye on the Prize. That is a one act, and it was in the Snapshots Festival in Port Perry's Theatre on the Ridge. And then it was in the very first Simcoe County Theatre Festival in Barrie as well. Before that, it all starts to jumble up because so much happened in the pandemic. I wrote a play, the play that I was mentioning that was the reason that I started writing plays seriously, is a World War II drama. It's called Bright Daybreak. And I had the dramaturgical assistance of Eli Ham and then Jeanette Lambermont-Maury. And during the pandemic, Jeanette and Stefan were doing online readings. And so they agreed to take on my script as an online reading. So it had a reading in that quarantine readers is what they were called. And that was great. And then that play got accepted into the Canadian New Play Festival at Lunchbox Theatre in Calgary. And again, we were still on the pandemic. So they did the best that they could do as a presentation on Zoom. So it was more than just a reading. We had the individual actors acting in their little individual squares with their little individual props and things like that. And that was wonderful. I was really happy for that to get a reading beyond that. And then I wrote a full-length play called Bobby that Theatre by the Bay produced a year ago in August, end of August, beginning of September. And it's a play about Bobby Rosenfeld, who is a Canadian sports icon. She went to the 1928 Olympics in track and field, and that was the first year that women were allowed in track and field events at the Olympics. And she won more points. There were 6 women on the women's team, and there were about 20 on the men's team going from Canada. She won more points than any other member of the Canadian team because she got a gold medal, a silver medal, and she got a 5th place, which gets you a point in a race that she hadn't even trained for, that her coaches asked her to enter to support another runner on her team. So she's just a remarkable, I could tell you story after story after story about Bobby Rosenfeld because she was incredible. But what I'm guessing you don't know is that her family emigrated from what is now the Ukraine, what was then Russia, to Barrie in 1904 when she was just a baby. And she grew up in Barrie. She lived in Barrie until she was 17. So her really formative athletic years were spent in Barrie. And then she moved to Toronto because she was clearly talented. And her family moved there with her, scraped together the money so that she would have access to more coaches, well, not more coaches, but just more teams, more opportunities, because they didn't even have sports clothes for women back then.
Wow.
She had to run in her brother's swim trunks. It was either that or big bloomers and a woolen dress. So,
well, the bloomers don't sound like a good bit of running material.
No. So anyway, she's an incredible person, and I wrote that story, and we had the sponsorship of the Am Shalom Synagogue in Barrie, which is wonderful. And one of my favorite things about having written that play is not just to bring Bobby's legacy into the present, because it deserves to be here as well.
Absolutely.
But also the fact that I am now a friend of her niece, whose name is Rochelle Thompson. And I have managed to bring 3 sets of cousins together who had been apart for decades, like over 50 years. Some of them hadn't ever seen each other. So that's like just, that's gold for me. So,
yeah, that's just incredible. So how did you happen upon Bobby's story in the first place? Because like we didn't talk about her in our Canadian history class, even though I wish we had.
I know,
so,
me
like,
too.
So like, how did you find her story then? Because it's not like she's widely known, unfortunately.
Well, she's widely known in specific circles. Like in some sports circles, she is known. But even when we did a workshop of the play in Toronto a year before it was produced, we had an entirely Jewish cast of like first choice of actors. It was so lovely. And not one of them had heard of her. Wow. And they were all astonished that they hadn't heard of her. Because there's a Bobby Rosenfeld Park in Toronto. It's a little patch of green that's between the base of the CN Tower, Ripley's Aquarium, and the Sky Dome.
Oh, that space.
Yes.
I know that park.
Yes, there was a fountain there, and they're finally refurbishing the fountain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a plaque there. If you look, you'll see the plaque.
Okay. Yep. Okay, but then how did you find her story?
Yeah, so my dad played a lot of sports when he was a teenager. And, you know, like I'm from Barrie through and through. Both sides of my family have been here since the 1800s. So when, as an adult, one of his Pee-wee teams was being inducted into the Barrie Sports Hall of Fame because they had a really good run in this particular season. And so I went to the ceremony because he's my dad. And when I was there, the ceremony was in a room in the Allendale Rec Center, for those who know Barrie. And up on the wall, up on the wall were these portraits of this woman running. And I thought, it looks like she's important based on the size of these portraits and their prominence in the room. So I went and I looked at the little caption. It said Bobby Rosenfeld. And I thought, that name sounds vaguely familiar. Why don't I know more about her if she's important enough to be up on this wall? And then I started researching. And the more I researched, the more incredible the stories were. I can remember sitting here. I share an office with my husband. And I can remember sitting here reading stuff and just like throwing my hands up in the air and going, let me read you this part too.
Yeah. Oh, see, that's great.
She's just, you know, it's one of those, the truth is stranger than fiction kind of lives. She just was a really remarkable person. So that's how I found out about her. And when I knew that she had grown up in Barrie, naturally I reached out to Ian Mogash at Theatre by the Bay because their mandate is local stories told by local artists.
Absolutely.
And and he loved it. And we just, you know, the rest is history. So.
Brilliant. I love that. And I mean, this isn't the whole episode is not about Bobby, but you do have another play coming down the pipeline.
Yes, I do. And
yes.
I was just going to say, and similarly, it is based on, it's inspired by the life of another Barrie resident.
Aha.
So,
okay.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about it. Give us the plot summary, the pitch, as it were.
Okay. So the play is called If the Shoe Fits. And it is about a gentleman named Charlie O'Connor, who is well known to many, 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 many people my age, a little younger, a lot older. He was born in the early 1900s and he died in 1983. And during the final 50 years of his life, he sold shoes out of the back of his house. Didn't have a store. He previously had a store. And then the Depression hit and there were no stores to be rented. So he just decided to sell shoes out of the back of his house. He was, by all accounts, a lovely man. So this play is about, when I researched him, he's a very chatty, very friendly, jovial, you know, all the people loved him kind of a man. And he was always friendly, and everyone always said they felt better when they left than when they arrived at his place. So he just had that effect on people. But I found out, I thought, what's behind someone who's so cheerful all the time and he talked a mile a minute. like really fast. So I just was wondering what was behind that. And so I let my imagination go a little bit. And I looked into the records about what was in his life. And this is a story where he is about to leave his family home and move to a retirement home. And so he is looking through some of the shoeboxes of,
Brilliant.
of memories and sort of coming to terms with the things in his life and finding that joyful equilibrium again. Yeah.
Brilliant. I love that. Okay, you sold me. I'm in. It sounds brilliant.
Well, that's good. I collected over 100 shoeboxes for the set, so I wouldn't have done it for nothing. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot of shoeboxes.
That's a lot of shoeboxes. I started last fall before I even knew I was in the festival. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, my friend just moved and I brought her shoeboxes and she's like, "Why did you bring me shoeboxes?" I'm like, "You will need shoeboxes more than you think to put all your little things in that you don't want to have, that can't fit in a big box.
Or you don't want to get broken.
Exactly. Yeah. Sure enough, she used every single one of those 10 shoeboxes I brought her. And she's like, "Thank God you did." I'm like, "I told you.
You're so wise.
I'm not crazy. I swear." She's like,
so that's
a big box, little box. It's like, what am I going to do with these? It's like, shoeboxes are more important than you can possibly know. They hold stories and they hold a lot of valuables.
Oh, yes. And the one thing that I didn't mention is that because Charlie talked so much, Charlie O'Connor is the man's name, it's a one-man show. So I've written it as my first one-man show experience. And it was really lucky. I'm a member of the Playwrights Guild of Canada, and I was able to be accepted into the mentorship program that they had a year ago, January. And I paired up with Don Hanna, who is a really wonderful, he writes fiction as well as plays and lives on the East Coast. And so we had this 3-month period where I could sort of pick his brains about a one-man show, and he could give me feedback on the kinds of things I was developing and on just how different a one-man show is from a cast show. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I was really fortunate.
Yeah. So speaking of writing a one-person piece, what were some of the challenges you faced when writing a one artist piece? Like, was there times where you were like, "You know what? I'm just going to bring in like another character. I need another character. There's no way I can tell this scene or this story without having another characters." Like, so like what kind of went into that challenge, and then like how did you maybe overcome that as a writer?
I think I was fortunate that I had previously written my World War II play because the first draft of the World War II play, I think it had a cast of 24 people or something like that. And I told the story. It's been revamped many times, and I told the story in a very different way. And now it's a cast of primarily 4 with a 5th person that could be a voiceover.
Okay.
Is better off as an actor. So, if I can condense World War II down to 4 guys on a stage, that's good practice. So I don't think I ever sort of threw up my arms and said, "No, I have to have another character." But I did know right from the outset that I had to be creative and figure out, okay, this guy is humble. He's not going to tell us how wonderful he is. So I have to have other ways to get other people's information in there. So that was definitely one of the challenges, is trying to talk about a man while he's there, not likely to tell you about himself. So I had to, that was one of the things that the memories that he had helped me to do, because he was rediscovering these things, because at the age of 81, you may have forgotten that you still had that. So that allows him to show us what he did in his life, so that we can then figure out what kind of a man he is. But the other thing is, I think, Mackenzie, you probably are familiar with the artist who is playing Charlie O'Connor in my play, because it is Stephen Bainborough. Yes. Stephen is a very talented actor, but I knew that he's never done a one-man show before either. So we sort of jumped into this challenge together.
Okay.
And with the assistance of Leah Holder, who is the company dramaturg for Theatre by the Bay, we were able to craft something that gave Stephen enough clues, hopefully, that there is no he's not going to find himself going in circles. There's no
Right.
logical other point to go to except the one that does come next. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a learning experience. And
Mm-hmm.
also with the mentorship with Don Hanna, he
Mm-hmm.
also told me very early on, he said, you need to find this man's voice first
Mm-hmm.
and foremost. You need to find his voice. You need to
Mm-hmm.
figure out who he's talking to. And he said, that sounds really obvious, but a lot of people start writing their one-man show and they get halfway through and they get tied up in knots because they haven't determined who they're talking to, who the
Mm-hmm.
character's talking to.
Mm-hmm.
So he was really, really helpful, sort of asking questions like Leah does,
Mm-hmm.
almost dramaturging just my notions of what this would
Mm-hmm.
be in its early stages.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So then how did you come up with the hook of he's moving into a retirement home, so he's going to go through all these shoe boxes? Like, because that's such a brilliant, as you said, a way in to get him to talk about himself as a humble man versus pontificating about his greatness. He has to have this other way in. So, like, which part came first? Like, kind of chicken and the egg? Was it like kind of like, how did you find that really brilliant way into this writing hook of he's moving, so he's got to pack up and look through his stuff?
It's really funny because when you finish writing
Mm-hmm.
something,
Mm-hmm.
parts of it always seem like a really bright stroke, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, how did you come up with that?
Yeah.
But when you're in the process, it's like eating a sandwich one bite at a time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
And the thing that I didn't mention is that when I was 4, my dad took
Mm-hmm.
me to his store to get me some shoes.
Oh, wow.
So I actually met him and I saw his space.
Mm-hmm.
So his space informed so much of what is
Mm-hmm.
in the play.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of shoeboxes, but he knew where
Mm-hmm.
everything was.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew we had to have all these stacks in the background, and I knew that he had to know where things were.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just, when I got thinking about what was in the shoeboxes, well, and then Leah said to me one day, doesn't always have to be shoes in the shoeboxes. And that, because I had shoes that were memories, right?
Right.
But then I realized, yes, Leah, there can be other things in there. So it kind of grew.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more I did that, the more I realized how much more I could do that.
Yes.
So, so it's kind of like his real life is the scaffolding
Mm-hmm.
on which I have hung the trappings of the play, So I really like to include as much that's authentic as I can,
Mm-hmm.
but I recognize that to give the story an arc,
Mm-hmm.
I have to introduce some things that are not of the character.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
like any good piece of based on a true story, there's elements that are absolutely true, and there's elements you're like, okay, we can either condense a certain historical moment into something so it gets us to point B, or sometimes we gotta create a little bit of our own way in to kind of still get us there, while still remaining within the character and not making up something totally wrong that like look back and go, well, you would never do that. It's like, well, this could have happened. We just don't know if it happened or not because we were not in somebody's everyday life. It's like watching The Crown sometimes. It's like we don't know what Prince Philip and the Queen actually talked about behind closed doors in their bedroom at night. They could have had a conversation about the moon landing.
Yes. And
who knows?
That's always my goal, that it be something that could have happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 And, the one thing that is hard is that Charlie's family, who have, been so wonderful in sharing stories and things with me about him, they would say that they're not sure how Charlie would feel about this play being presented because he was such a humble man, that they're not sure he would be comfortable having all this attention put on him. But, he's like so many unsung heroes that they deserve to be recognized.
Yep. Yeah. So. Yeah. Every city has these wonderful local heroes who, may not end up in a history book like Bobby should have.
Yes.
But,
she's in a few, but She's
in a few, but not nearly enough. But like Charlie's one of those great local heroes who's just part of the tapestry of Barry, even though sometimes people might not recognize his thread. But there are people like you who say, I've been to a shoe store. I remember going there. There's those living memories that
Yes.
he's around for.
And actually, I'm glad you said that, because what I forgot to mention in terms of the inspiration for the show is that there is a Facebook page that's called something like, "If you grew up in Barrie, you remember when." Something like that.
Yeah.
And I belong to it, and sometimes it pops up in my feed.
Yeah.
And every now and then, somebody mentions something about Charlie O'Connor. And all these people go, "I remember getting my shoes from him. I got my first pair of saddle shoes, blah, blah, blah." And, and everybody talks about how wonderful he was and how kind and generous he was, because he also knew all of his customers. He remembered what kind of shoes they liked. He remembered what their size was, didn't have to measure anybody's feet. He noticed if some lad came into a store who had just won a basketball game, for example. He knew that and, complimented him on it. So he's just one of those salt of the earth kind of people,
Yeah. I love that. And so when you started writing this piece about Charlie, and obviously you mentioned Stephen is playing him in this piece, did you always have Stephen in mind for this role? So did you already have kind of like Stephen's voice in your head as well as Charlie's? Or is that something where it's like you started with Charlie and then went, who do I have in my wonderful Rolodex of artists who would be a good fit, and you went, Stephen, you're perfect, and then Stephen kind of came in after, or was that always a bit of a together?
I think the notion of a play about Charlie came first, but very soon after that, I realized, in conversation with Ian Malgash at Theatre by the Bay, actually, that it made sense for it to be a one-man show. So as soon as I recognized that, my first thought was, okay, who can play a man this elderly, which Stephen is not, and pull that off as a one-man show? But not only that, the reason that Stephen immediately came to mind is because there are some poignant moments in this show, and there are many, many joyful moments in this show. And Stephen can absolutely do both of those on stage. And that's not always a common thing, to be really authentic in both of those things.
Yes.
So very early on, I sort of went, ooh, I think it's Stephen.
I love
Unfortunately, we have a great relationship. When my first show was in the theater festival in its first year, it's now the third year, he directed the show, my play.
Okay.
He had directed Eye on the Prize. So I'm fortunate that he's willing to work with me. Very grateful that he's taking on this challenge, because 45 minutes alone on the stage, that's a lot to ask.
It's a lot. And either it works or it doesn't work. I mean, I'm now going into my third year of going to see Toronto Fringe shows, and there are quite a few one artist shows that you go and see, and some of them really hit, and you go, oh my goodness, this was great. And sometimes you're left there going, how long? Because this isn't vibing for whatever reason. So
it's a completely different animal, and so
it totally is.
It's
not as easy as people think it is.
And I think if you're writing a show about yourself, that's an entirely different thing again than just writing a show for one artist that isn't you.
Correct.
So lots to learn. I love to learn. So
absolutely. So then, speaking now more into what you're currently doing now, which is the rehearsal process, what has that been like for you as the playwright? Like, how much has changed? Was there any particular sequence or scene or section that you were really like attached to, but then ultimately you kind of had to go, nope, this isn't working, or we're running a bit too long here, and this is a section that we can kind of unfortunately have to delete from this particular version?
I am lucky in that with just about everything that I've written, if it's not quite the length that I intended when I started out, then it's a little bit under rather than a little bit over. So that works so well, because then when you take it into workshop, you can find out where the actors feel there's meat that you haven't fully fleshed out, fleshed out. There we go.
Fleshed out.
So that worked well in this place.
Mhm.
Of course, there are, you end up killing your darlings. There's a joke that doesn't
Yep.
land or whatever.
Yep.
Those kinds of things. I've been edited for much of my life.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that my skin is a little tougher than to worry about
Mhm.
those things, because
Yeah.
ultimately they make the piece better. And that's what we're all trying to
Yes.
do, is make the piece
Yes.
better. But mostly the changes that have occurred have been things that will assist Stephen.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's hard to explain without telling you exactly the
Right.
situation, and I don't
Yeah.
want to do that. But sometimes there is something that I was intending in the script,
Mhm.
and now that he knows what I'm intending, he
Mm.
can pull that off better
Yeah.
by
Mhm.
modifying something.
Mhm.
Specifically adding words where I've just trailed off, for example, or
Right.
something. Those sorts of really minor
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And other things are just, in the early stages of this, we've ensured that we had enough other cues for him.
Mhm.
So there are some sound cues that are going to help him
Mhm.
with that whole flow,
Mhm.
being able to take that thread right through without losing his way. And
Yeah.
also some costume things,
Yeah.
because he has some elements of costume that come on and off for different
Mhm.
parts
Yeah.
and in association with what he's talking about. So
Mhm.
those are mostly the changes that we have found.
Mhm.
Yeah. We
Okay.
get, we get one special effect, and I'm super excited about the
Ooh.
special effect because it's working
Can't
really
wait.
well.
Well, we can't wait to have it be seen. I love that. So you mentioned you were able to meet up with Charlie's family
Yes.
while doing this writing and rehearsing process. Are there any stories they've told you that you go, this is a great story, but it doesn't quite fit within this particular piece that I'm doing now, that you would think you would love to either bring back later, or just one that you think really is a good Charlie story that it's just a
Um,
good standalone piece?
there were probably a few minor things, and I think
Mhm.
that I have left myself some openings
Mhm.
where things can be expanded on a little, things that
Mhm.
I've just touched on
Yeah.
that don't absolutely have to be, but I think
Mhm.
will when I make it a one-man show. The
Mhm.
one thing that I will comment on, it's
Mhm.
not quite what you asked, but
I love it.
most people, when you bring up Charlie O'Connor, they
Mhm.
say, my dad or somebody
Mhm.
always said they figured that Don Herron's Charlie Farquharson was based on Charlie O'Connor
Mhm.
because they wore the same clothes and they talked fast. And
Mhm.
so I did a bunch of digging to find out
Mhm.
if there was any way, because Don Herron had a summer home just south of Barrie.
Oh.
When he was with Catherine McKinnon.
Mhm.
And so I thought, so it's conceivable that if he's from somewhere in this area, he could have
Yeah.
encountered Charlie.
Yeah.
So, from what I can tell, because I actually found the biography that he wrote with his daughter, so it's kind of
Mhm.
a semi-autobiography.
Mhm.
She says that the Charlie Farquharson character was based on an amalgam of farmers that he met in sort of Eastern Ontario. So
Right.
more like Kingston,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
sort of part of the province.
Got
So
it.
it probably is just like you said,
Yeah.
every town has these characters. And,
Yeah.
I think that
Mhm.
they are a recurring thing. Maybe they're not all
Yeah.
quite as wonderful as Charlie, but
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that I did not do
Yeah.
anything with that
Mhm.
notion in the play.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. And then before we move on to some of these later questions I have, because we're in the middle of writing and things like that, you mentioned how you've done a whole bunch of other writings besides just being a playwright.
Yes.
So, what has been similar or different about this particular writing process for
Mm,
you?
that's a good question.
Mhm.
Um,
Yay, I
I
got one really good. Mhm.
I think the biggest difference, so the similarity is it's storytelling,
Mhm.
so you understand
Yeah.
that you have to really dig deep into the character's backstory in order to
Yeah.
make them a true character that lives and
Mhm.
breathes and walks on the stage. And the
Mhm.
same is true in a novel. You really
Mhm.
need to do those major character sketches. I used to ask all these questions about
Yeah.
each and every character in my books, like right down
Mhm.
to what's the one secret they'll never tell anybody, and
Mhm.
all those kinds of things. Anyway, so the all that character work is
Mhm.
very transportable from writing fiction
Mhm.
to writing for the stage. However,
Mhm.
I learned that I need to depend more on my actors. I need to find a way to give the actors exactly what they need to understand what I'm getting at without giving them more words than necessary for that, because so much of it they can portray. As long as they understand as long as I've given them the message clearly enough, then they can portray the message in fewer words than I think they need. So in other words, I overwrite and then I cut back, which I think is a fairly common thing. But in the beginning, I overwrote a whole lot more than I do now. So yeah, learning to trust both the audience and the actors. That's the shift, right? Because you don't have anything like that when you're writing fiction.
Yeah. Now, yes, this question just came to me because I'm thinking about Charlie and your different types of writing. Have you ever considered trying to do a screenplay of any of these theatrical works where because this Charlie one seems like it would be a prime way to go from just a one-man stage show to then expanding to like either a short film or something like that where you can kind of grow it out again a bit.
That's interesting. I've thought of that about some of my others, not about this one necessarily. And I think it's because I'm finally, when I first wrote the World War II play, someone said to me, not incorrectly, this is more like a diorama than it is a play for the stage.
Right.
And I think that like a lot of people, I started thinking more filmically when I was writing action.
Yeah.
But I think I've gotten better at that. So now I feel like, oh, these things won't work on film because I've written them for that wonderful, glorious connection between the character and the audience. Yeah. Like I really try to take that audience into account when I'm writing and really rely on that audience being there. So it's really hard for me to think of some of these things as a short film. That being said, I think you just reinvent it, from a different perspective. Yeah. But I'm still working so hard at trying to master, trying to even become proficient at the dramatic format that I haven't thought about any of those other things yet.
Yeah. I love it. So then this is now going to go up at the Simcoe County Theatre Festival. So besides this being about a very notable Barrie resident who many people from a certain generation will remember and know, why else do you think this piece will speak to those from Barrie and then also those maybe beyond Barrie as well?
The main reason is because the entire story hangs on the fact that we don't present what we're actually experiencing. So let's say you wake up one morning, you're having a really crappy day, but you have to do an interview with me on Zoom.
Right.
So you muster all your cheerfulness, and this is how you present while we're doing the Zoom. But behind that, there could be something else happening entirely. And that's really what this play is about the possibility that something else was really behind all of that. And I think that I don't know a person who is 100% authentic to their actual feelings every minute of the day.
Yeah.
And that's why we are so shocked when people suddenly find out that people have been struggling because we didn't see it. So I think it's a really important mental health message, quite honestly, because everyone is struggling with something. We just don't know what it is, and it's just different for everyone. But no one's life is a golden sunbeam every single day.
Absolutely.
So it's that awareness as well.
Wonderful. And I think, and so then you've mentioned how this piece is 45 minutes, but there's an opportunity to go longer. And then obviously every show always hopes it goes beyond its inaugural run. So, and then just because this piece is about a Barrie resident, how do you think you could translate it to beyond Barrie? Because obviously there are people from the East Coast, West Coast who could maybe relate to some of this, but not, as you said, there are the farmers, from Kingston who are very similar to Charlie. But they're like, how would you go about connecting it with those other people who may go, a Barry show? But we're in Kingston, like,
Oh yeah,
because
yeah.
obviously,
And I think
it's a one-person show about a particular human being. Like, how
yes.
have you maybe tried to, make it more universal while still keeping
I
that
think
Barry out?
I think it's actually quite universal
Mm-hmm,
in its identity and in its
mm-hmm,
content. I think,
mm-hmm.
we're upping the Barry branding right now because
Yeah,
we're putting it on Barry. But we're
absolutely.
also presenting it. It's been accepted to the London Fringe Festival in August in
Amazing.
London, Ontario. And so we won't play up the Barry thing there,
Yeah,
but it's the small
yeah.
community feel, and also
Mm-hmm,
as we say, every town has these
mm-hmm.
quirky characters
Yeah,
that
yeah.
everybody knows, even though they
Yes.
don't go out of their way to, make a big
Mm-hmm.
deal about themselves.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
just become known to people. And
yeah.
I think it will
Mm-hmm,
play in more rural settings even
mm-hmm,
better,
mm-hmm.
because I think
Yeah,
they will relate to that, because
yeah.
in those rural settings, people know each other so much more.
Yes,
You know your neighbors,
yes,
and yeah.
yes.
So and because of the strong
Mm-hmm.
front, the
Yeah,
facade in
yeah.
front of what else might be going on, I think
Mm-hmm.
it really is a fairly universal story. So it's
Okay.
really just, I think, about making sure that the audience that you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
attract is aware of that
Mm-hmm.
universal
Mm-hmm.
element, so that they can connect.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I mean, you've answered almost basically every question. I mean, sometimes you already answered before you even got to ask them. So you are brilliant
Yeah,
at
I have a
this.
habit of doing that kind of thing.
You're wonderful at it. You're wonderful at it. But before we wrap up, I do want to give you a chance to. Do you have any imparting message for the audiences who are going to be coming about your piece? Is there anything you want them to be looking for when they come see the show, or anything that you're really hoping they'll take away, or is it just, or is there anything you kind of want them to, feel or know about the piece before when they're coming in?
Well, I'll say first of all that the festival itself
Mm-hmm.
in Simcoe County, the
Yeah,
Simcoe County Theatre Festival in
yeah.
Barrie, is comprised of 7 different shows,
Mm-hmm.
minus just one. They are a wide range of shows.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that Theatre by the Bay does every year, is they curate a
Mm-hmm.
really interesting mix of pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you can buy a festival pass, so you can
Brilliant.
see all 7 productions if you want to, which I
Love that.
highly recommend. You can even
Yeah.
come I think it's on the Saturday and the Sunday. If you want, you can see all the plays in that one go, or you can spread them out if you happen to live in the area.
Brilliant.
So I really recommend seeing the whole festival, because you
Mm-hmm.
get all the different perspectives and ideas and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But coming to see our show in particular, I'm having a lot of fun right now creating the sound effects.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I know this sounds silly, but I
Mm-hmm.
love planning the pre-show music.
Yes, it's a big part. It sets the mood.
It really does. It really does.
Yeah.
And I think that I want the overall takeaway,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, to realize how remarkable this man was, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
but also how many other equally remarkable people are there out there that we're not aware of, because this is just an everyday man,
Yes.
with this, what I think is a pretty remarkable story.
Yeah.
So I think I want people to take that as a message of hope in terms of dealing with their own things in their lives. And I don't mean
Mm-hmm.
to belittle or simplify, because many people have many challenges, but I hope that people can see it as a bit of a light that can help them through their dark days.
I love that.
Cliche as that kind of sounds, but
That's perfect, though. That's perfect. And I mean, I will say, you've now done Bobby's play. You've now done Charlie. You're kind of making a mark for yourself as kind of finding these Barry personalities, these Barry figures who are being able to be adapted to your plays. So I'm wondering, is there already a third Barry resident or citizen that you're eyeing as a potential follow up to
You have
Charlie?
no idea. You have no idea, Mackenzie. Actually, I mentioned my World War II play, Bright Daybreak.
Right.
The origins of that
Mm-hmm.
is a bag of more than 300 letters written by a Shanty Bay soldier back to his family during World War II.
Okay.
I knew his sister We went to the same church.
Oh, wow.
And she was quite elderly, and she entrusted me with these letters. And they're the basis of my World War II play. And the really amazing thing about that, so I'm gonna tell you the amazing things, because I love what goes along with writing these plays.
Yeah.
Is that last year because of the Bobby play, I reconnected with a gentleman named Steve Glover. Yes. Who is a historian with the Royal Canadian Legion in Barrie, the branch in Barrie. And he and I got talking again because I had talked to him when I was doing research for my World War II play. Yeah. And he said, what was the name of that soldier again? And I told him. And he said, did he have a friend or something? I said, yeah, the two of them from Shanty Bay enlisted together. And he said, do you want to get them on flags? Because Barrie flies these banner type flags in remembrance of their war soldiers. And I said, that'd be amazing. And so now Sergeant Bob Henson and Sergeant Jack Kendall have banner flags that are flying in Barrie. Which makes me really happy. And the city of Barrie last year, in honor of the play and in honor of Bobby's legacy primarily, they declared August 30th, which I believe was opening night of the play, as Bobby Rosenfeld Day, to be celebrated annually. And over the course of this year, the Barrie Horse Sports Hall of Fame created a Bobby Rosenfeld flag, which will be raised on the flagpole this year at a ceremony on August 30th on Bobby Rosenfeld Day.
Beautiful.
And I'm trying to get the city council to consider renaming Bursey Park O'Connor Park, because Charlie's house that he sold shoes out of was on Bursey Street. So I'm really trying to bring these people, into the collective,
Yeah. Brilliant. Well,
so that's the local angle.
I love the local angle. Once again, these are local people who deserve just to have their story told as much as, a play about, John F. Diefenbaker.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Like, I'm not doing anything about the guy named Lount who built the castle on Castle Drive. And, it's the quiet voices. But I also have to say that as much as they are local stories, they're also universal stories, each of them in their own way. So I love that. I love that we can honor these local people, but I can still make a piece of theater that speaks to audiences everywhere.
Brilliant. I love it. So, Trudee, give us the show dates of when the festival is running and kind of where people can go get tickets.
Yes. So the festival runs from July 10th to July 21st. And over the course of that period, of course, there are a couple of dark days and things, but over the course of that period, If the Shoe Fits will be performed 6 times. Okay. So you have 6 chances within the festival to go see it.
Got it.
You can get your tickets at the Theatre by the Bay website, which is www.theatrebythebay.com.
Yeah, we'll link it down below as well.
Okay, great. And then also, if you happen to live in the London area, If the Shoe Fits will be at the London Fringe. That runs August 13th to 17th.
Okay.
And there will be a chance to see, they haven't come out with their schedule yet, but there will be a performance of the show each of those 5 days.
Great. Awesome. We'll link that down there as well, too. Perfect. And awesome. Trudee, if people wanted to contact you and say, hey, we heard about this Bobby piece through this conversation. We want to get in contact with you so we can, mount it, Hamilton next year or some local high school wants to do it. So somewhere in Kingston. Is there like a website that you have that people can message you on or email or kind of?
I have a website. Well, I have a website that's just TrudeeRomanek.com. So as long as you know how to spell my name, you're laughing.
Well, we'll link it down below too. You'll send me the link and I can link it down
that's
below
great.
in the video.
Yeah. And the other thing is that the script for Bobby, for example, is in the Canadian Play Outlet that is hosted by the Playwrights Guild of Canada. So you can actually go and buy a copy of the script for $12 or something like that. Yeah. Get a digital copy of the script if you want to read it to see if it's suitable for whoever. So, yeah.
Wonderful. And Trudee, I don't know how much you want to advertise your own social media, but at the end of every episode, we always give people a chance to plug their socials if they want to. You don't have to. Ryan is our wonderful co-artistic producer, and his classic line is, "Don't follow me, just follow the theater companies I'm talking to." instead pass the love that
Yeah,
way.
I don't have, the truth is, I don't have a lot of social media presence. I have
Yeah.
an author page on Facebook in addition to
Okay.
my personal page.
Yep.
I don't do Twitter anymore because not a Musk
Neither do I.
fan.
Yep.
And I have never been an Instagrammer because I just, you know
Ah,
what? I spend too much time on my phone as it is.
yes.
So I'm mostly just trying to network at events,
Mhm.
and by going to workshops and that, I prefer the in-person networking kind of thing.
Perfect.
So that's more
Perfect.
what I do. And
Well,
yes, please follow the theater company, and
yep.
the theater festival has its
Mhm.
own Facebook page. The Simcoe
Great.
County Theatre Festival has its own Facebook
Okay.
page. So, and I think the London Fringe does as well. I just don't have all the information for it yet because it's a little further on. So,
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well,
yeah,
I mean, we'll link. We'll definitely link Theater by the Bay. We'll link the festival, both festivals, London and Bear in the Simcoe County, and then we'll also link your website so people do want to get in contact with you. They can message you
great.
through there because I'm sure you're gonna have people banging in here going, "I got a local person here that we would love to have you talk about and find your universal tale."
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
love to just go hang out at the Simcoe County archive
Yeah.
because there's just so much stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
I found out like there's all these interesting people that have connections to
Yes.
Barrie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, trust me. Trust me. Growing up in Barrie, I'm sure I could probably tell you a few that I've known, and I'm like, you could do a very interesting play
Yeah.
about this group of people.
And I'll be honest, Mackenzie, I've got,
Mhm.
like I said, my dad's family,
Yeah.
the Tomlinsons, they
Yeah.
moved to Ontario in 1819. They lived on the
Wow.
south side of Kempenfelt Bay,
Yeah.
like down in Keswick area.
Yeah.
My mom's family came here in 1847, I think, maybe
Wow.
57, something like that. So I've got all kinds of stories here. Like
Yeah.
I've got 3 stories alone that I'm thinking of making a trilogy out of that are just my great great grandmother's family
Brilliant. Well,
because they
when you
were
do those,
so interesting.
I want to have you back so you can talk about the writing process of that trilogy.
Well, and you'll have to have me back because I haven't even told you anything about the 28 Plays Later challenge that I have done twice now, writing
Oh
a
my
new play every
goodness.
day in February.
Oh my goodness. That is like, yeah, we definitely have to have you back just so we can, go through all that. I mean, like during COVID, we had our play book club that we did every Saturday night where we would all get together on Zoom and read it and just kind of read a play. And I mean, I wish I had known you had all these great plays. I mean, like, Trudee, come on in for a few episodes. We'll do some local readings for you.
We actually did a fun thing in April of this year. I pinpointed, I think there were 9 plays that I had written either this 28 Plays Later, this
Mhm.
February, which was actually 29 Plays Later because it was a leap
Yeah.
year, or
Leap
the
year.
one in 2021. And I got 6 fabulous readers to come, and we had a fundraiser night. So people came and they could hear those 9 plays we read, and I
Yeah.
had silent auction items, and we raised money for
Brilliant.
Theater by the Bay. So
I love
it was
that.
super fun.
I love
Yeah.
that.
And I
Well, I
got to
mean,
hear all my work.
that's great. That's exactly
Yeah.
what we want. Get the voices, get these pieces up because people forget sometimes that, plays are meant to be played with. They're not meant just to be read alone in your room
Yes.
during a pandemic. They're meant to be taken out and flexed and played with and put up on their feet. That's the joy of
Yeah.
plays. They're
Yes.
literally a play.
Yeah. A different
Yeah.
one each time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Wonderful. Well, Trudy, we are going to wish you all the best, you and Stephen and the whole crew of If the Shoe Fits,
Thank you.
on a great, terrific run, and we can't wait to hear more about it. And then, if you got anything else you want to pitch to us and say, hey, come on up and see it, like our team is always eager to get out and see new works or even remountings of older works that are getting new life brought back into them. So we cannot wait to have you back on for
Lovely.
more fun conversations and more fun discussions for sure. I will say before we go though, people can follow me at Mackenzie Horner on social media platforms. Follow my musical theater antics over at Before the Downbeat, a musical podcast, which now also features very local Scott Hurst as a co-host as well. So we have that. And then of course we have all our wonderful Cup of Hemlock goodies here, between editorials to reviews to duet conversations to interviews. We have almost
Lovely.
200 videos now of
Wow.
content that we have
That's
done
impressive.
since the pandemic. So we are nearing our ever closer. And I will say we do have Ian from Theater by the Bay lined up to
Huh.
come on and do an interview a little bit later on, which will come out around August.
Lovely. He's a fantastic. He's got a great brain, that man, and tons of passion. He's really, really
work together
wonderful.
Back when he first came to Theater by the Way, that first summer.
Yes.
With him and Samantha. They worked together, and that was a fun summer we spent. So he is absolutely wonderful. So I can't wait to have that bit of content come out. But until then, we will all enjoy your wonderful work, and then we will see you in a future episode. I am positive.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on and having this lovely chat. It's like old times.
Just like old times, Trudee. Just like old times indeed. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you all in our next episode. All right.